teachers are seen to be increasingly resorting to PPTs to integrate ICT in teaching. Now, there are two things here that we need to understand. A, ICT is not only about using PPTs in the classroom. And B, what is the role of a PPT and how is it related to educational or teaching skills? Let us reflect. What do I know about ICT? Why do I use a PPT? How could it possibly enable teaching learning? Well, the answer to the first question has been dealt with separately in this refresher course. Since our primary focus in this section is on teaching skills, let us look at the use of technology from the perspective of teaching skills. What makes a good presenter? We saw some of the qualities a teacher as a good presenter needs to cultivate. So, what makes a good presentation? Let's look at some elements that make for, as of now, a good PPT, since PPTs are the most common technological resource used in the classroom. Now, the vital question over here is a PPT a substitute for the text or for the teacher? Well, it is neither. Somehow as teachers, we have a notion that a lot of text and matter make for good slides, and then we proceed to read all that is written on the slide. Contrary to popular presumption, this exercise, instead of adding variety to the teaching approach, adds to the monotony of a session and makes it repetitive and redundant. Ask yourself, how many times have we been utterly bored and confused and overwhelmed by the deluge of material which we see projected on slide after slide in a dark room? So then what should a slide have? A slide should be an aid and not a substitute. A slide can have charts, graphs, diagrams, tables, which are otherwise painstaking and time-consuming to produce on the blackboard. A slide can have prompts or visual metaphors, which perform a symbolic function and represent the idea or the thought or the concept the teacher wants to convey. It can be witty and humorous too, like the one you're about to see. The slide that you see is one of the series of slides to show the development of structuralism. This particular slide shows in a nutshell the endeavor and preoccupation of linguists during the 19th century with an undertone of humor and wit, which is evident in the visual of the epitaph. As teachers, one significant skill we need to develop is the discrete use of technology in the classroom. For this, we must again do the exercise of putting ourselves in the shoes of a learner, a student, and reflecting and listing down technological supplements we might like in a lecture, and as a teacher to reflect on the objective of using technology in the classroom. Sometimes a short audio or a video clip can be used to ease the tension or break the ice or for rapport building purposes, or simply to introduce a topic or create a conducive learning environment. Coming to PPTs, smart, clean slides on a light background, not more than one or at the most two ideas on a single slide, matter in a readable font size and conventional colors with minimum distractors and animation, and a uniform template are some of the features we need to keep in mind while designing a presentation. So for example, if we look at this slide, we will see that they are all subpoints of one single idea in a clearly readable font size against a light backdrop. If a slide is a strain on the eyes of the viewer, which could be due to a bad choice of color and combination of colors, or too much text or too small a font size, if a slide has matter that echoes the input of the teacher, if a slide is too busy in terms of having several diagrams, tables and charts jostling with each other for space, then the PPT will mar the learning process instead of aiding it. Any technology-based input can be used in much the same manner as textual input, and even more for task generation, extended discussions, analysis, theorization, and hypothesis. When we expect the learner to engage with the input, be it a text or a video or a PPT, we need to make sure that we give the learner a reason to engage with the input. A focus, in other words. So we need to give 3 kinds of tasks to the learners. Pre, that is before watching or reading or viewing or listening to the input. While, and post, that is after observation or reading based on the input. This practice will also help us understand the extent of learner involvement with the input and the degree of learner comprehension. Now let us move on to another very important teaching skill of question framing, which is not merely an important and essential skill for teachers, but also a significant learning skill to be developed and cultivated in learners. For this, I'd like you to pause and do an exercise. It's a very interesting exercise. Think of a topic that you teach. Pick up just a small paragraph, a short paragraph or a section of the text. Now frame some questions around the text. Now read your questions, the questions that you've framed, and decide how many of the questions framed by you have answers in the text and how many have answers beyond the text. Mark the first lot of questions as C and the second lot of questions as O. C and O stand for closed and open questions respectively. Any input should be followed by an equal number of closed and open questions. Each category of questions has a specific objective. Closed questions whose answers lie in the text or the input are important as they check comprehension and understanding of the concept or the central idea or theme of the input. Closed questions also develop in the learner the ability to look for proof and substantiate an argument with the help of evidence located in the input. Open questions can hone the critical thinking and analytical skills of your students, on the other hand. They prompt the learner to seek answers beyond the text or the input and underpin the application-based aspect of learning. Both, in their own ways, aid in the process of deep learning. Question framing, therefore, needs attention and careful planning, keeping in mind the desired learning outcome and intended skill to be developed in the learner. As teachers, we also need to encourage our students to ask questions and assist in developing their question framing skills. The questions framed by students can be put across by students to their peers, which will promote learner autonomy and increase student participation, thus leading to a more student-centered approach. A simple exercise which the teacher can take up is assign a section of the input, which could be a text, a video, or an audio, to each group and have them frame questions on the input. While students are at it, the teacher can go around monitoring unobtrusively and assisting them with language and phrasing where required. The questions can be exchanged and responses sought from other groups, or the questions can be put up on the walls and students made to go around and respond to them or discuss them, or the questions can be turned into tasks and assignments. The teacher can vary the interaction pattern in each of these activities. For example, it can be one group interacting with another group, or each student getting a question after they have been shuffled and seeking the answer from someone else. On this slide, you can see examples of interaction patterns in the classroom. T stands for teacher and S stands for students. So, for example, number 1 is the teacher addressing the students and the students listening, like in a conventional classroom. Number 4 is 2 students making a presentation and the teacher and the rest of the class observing. This could be the interaction pattern during a student-led presentation or a demonstration or peer teaching. Number 5 is the students engaged in pair work with the teacher monitoring them. Note how the teacher's positioning changes with the interaction pattern. Interaction patterns are determined by the stages and phases of a session and the kind of planning the teacher has done for that particular stage. Varying interaction and grouping patterns allows all learners to engage and get involved in the learning process and does away with the hierarchy of the classroom.